Hello. Good Monday. Hope you're all doing well. Excited to see you here. Mayra, Danielle, Michaela, thanks for chatting before we even get started. Well, Rumi has a tooth. That's a pre-announcement. Isn't that crazy? He has a tooth. He's 4 months old. Man, it's going too fast. The other kids never got any till 8 months. And he's so happy. Like, he's so happy and hasn't really fussed at all. He's been drooling. And of course, he likes to chew on fingers and stuff. And yesterday I stuck my finger in there. And there it was, a little razor blade. So we all congratulated him. Yay, Rumi, you did such a good job growing a tooth. Kids were so excited, and all of them had to see it for themselves. So I don't know. He's growing so fast. He's big. He's a big boy. And now a tooth. Oh, this week we also have David's birthday, which is exciting. David will be 4 on Wednesday. And yeah, many of you, most of you have seen her birth. If not, it's in 13 Moons. It was a really great birth. It was a seriously great birth. And she's such a special little monkey. I mean, they all are, but she was especially special coming after a loss. And just thinking back to that time, you know, like knowing that she was coming even before I was pregnant with her. When I was still pregnant with Sable, I knew she was coming, and she was really impatient feeling in her energy. And she's a little Aries, she's a little fire sign. And she was born a week before we thought she'd come. I really thought she'd come in April, but the very last day of March and a couple of days prior to that, I kind of had a feeling. So I was surprised she was a March baby, but as I've shared in many places, it feels like that was on purpose, since Sable came out March 6th, the year before. So March is a very special month in our house, and it makes sense. She wanted to get in on that. So I can't believe she's 4, or will be 4. She's a funny little thing. She wants to hear the other kids' birth stories a lot, not so much hers for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's like too weird, but she watched her birth the other morning, and I don't know how it feels to watch your own birth as a baby. I think kids are often in disbelief, or like they don't really understand maybe when they're that young that it's them. I don't know, but she's already watched the birth, and maybe we'll watch it again on Wednesday. But yeah, that was such a great birth. I mean, they've all been great, but that one, I guess, because it's also caught on video, allows me to really remember it in that way. And because we have so much video, in fact, the version that most people have seen is pretty long. It's like 15 or 16 minutes. I mean, it's pretty long for a birth video, but we have so much other footage that we should do something with that someday, you know, footage of the labor, which I think is really fun. And many people, you know, don't see labors, they see births, but we have a lot of labor clips we could put together sometime. So I don't know. Well, thanks, Mayeda. Yeah, it feels like that was a really influential birth for me too. And it's always nice to hear that people are really touched by it and reference it. And 4 years isn't that long, but you know, I've had 2 other babies since, and there's new birth videos all the time. So I don't often show it even here in the workshop. I figure people can watch it in 13 Moons. So anyway, Rumi has a tooth. David's birthday is this week. I wanted to share just a brief resource that is not necessarily birth related, but I was feeling a renewed interest in reacquainting myself with the 4 agreements. So if people don't know what that is, it's a really awesome book you should check out. And I don't know what I did with it. I actually think I have it at home, so I don't have it to show you. Or I have this other version. Let me see if I can grab it. So Don Miguel Ruiz is the Four Agreements, and this is actually the companion book. So this isn't like the actual Four Agreements. This is a version he wrote after that to kind of like go deeper. So I might take that home with me today, but I have the Four Agreements at home, and someone reminded me of them this past weekend. And so I wanted to share them with you briefly if it's new to you. And if it's not new to you, Zara, for example, honesty, yeah, most of you probably know, but I thought it would be fun to just review them quickly together because they're so good, right? And so pertinent. And if you don't know what they are, it comes from an ancient Toltec teachings, and it's not, it's not based on any specific religion. Like these are just sort of rules, so to speak, for living well as a human in an intentional way. So I pulled them up on my computer so I could go through them a little quicker, but I wanted to review them. So there's only 4. We'll only take a minute here. So the first agreement, be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. So, super important. And I feel like I'm needing a reminder of that this morning after sort of a weird weekend, moving related stuff. Okay, second agreement, don't take anything personally. This is my favorite one, and the one I need the most reminding about. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. That is truth, huh? It's amazing how much suffering can come from taking things personally. Definitely my favorite one. I shouldn't have a favorite. Okay, the third, don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Well, that's also a really good one. So maybe I don't have a favorite. Yeah, it's so easy to assume, right? I mean, I totally do it. Assume you know what something is about or what someone means by what they're saying. And especially if you're sensitive to people's energy, like you can feel stuff, but still, even if you're feeling it, you can't really assume you know what it's about. So that's a really good one. The fourth agreement, always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. So there they are in simple format. Yeah. Hello, Isabel. Yeah. I mean, they all, like, again, I thought I had a favorite, but I really don't. And I guess by favorite, I more meant the one I need the most and the way that's feeling lately. But that's a hard one between the don't taking it personally and the making assumptions. Like those totally can make life pretty miserable. So yeah, just sharing because I needed that. And I'm going to go home and reread that whole book, because, you can read it in like probably half an hour or something. Cool. Yeah. These earrings are courtesy of, I don't know, some store in Sedona that my daughters went to and surprised me with. That was fun. I love earrings. Okay. Well, that's not really birth related. I'm trying to think if there's any other things. I mean, I've been sharing a lot on podcasts, so I'm not going to blab on about the moving drama and such. All I'm going to say, and I'm saying this more to the universe at large, not necessarily any of you in particular, is yeah, I'm just wondering about the retreat center dream that we have and what that timing is or looks like. Um, and I don't know. So I'm just like really being honest about that. And I'm saying it because I still really think there's someone out there in the world that maybe I know, or maybe I don't know, or maybe you know, or you know someone that knows someone that knows someone. I really think there's more people out there that have access to a property that would be really perfect for a retreat center and would be interested in selling it to us at a reasonable price. And, that's a tall order on some days. And it's not happening here for all the reasons I've shared, but I still think it's possible. In fact, I know it's possible. I'm just not sure of the timing. And that's been sort of difficult to just accept because it might not be right now. It might not be right now. It might not be as our family is also trying to find this place. But I'm just going to say it again. If you know someone with a really cool property, and if I'm being really specific, if it has buildings on it that can already be used, that would be amazing because we could pretty much get to work right away offering this place. We've had a couple like potential opportunities that haven't really worked out. Like for example, there's a really amazing property we found in the location is to be revealed if it ever works out. And at this moment, it's looking like maybe it won't, but we literally have not gotten a phone call back about it. So it's not a yes, it's not a no. It's like, is this place for sale? So just funny things like that the universe seems to be doing. And one card I've been pulling a lot in this whole thing has been, well, and I'll have to explain how I've been pulling it, but it's been the direction card. But it's been part of a card pull where this card and the placement where it is what to not get caught up in, if that makes sense. So I keep pulling direction there. In other words, to me, that means like, don't get obsessed with things having to be linear, like this happens and then this happens and then this happens, because things happen out of order too, is how I'm kind of reading it. And unexpected things come in when you least expect them, right? That's why they're unexpected. So I'm sharing that again because putting the intention out seems to be pretty powerful. And yeah, I don't doubt it will happen at some point and in just the right spot, but no idea where that is. So there you go. All right. Well, thanks for, hanging out today, Midwife Monday. We're going to talk about a couple of birth-related topics, but the chat box always is good for things that you have, even if it seems random. And if I really can't get to it, then I won't. But usually it's nice to have more things to talk about. So let's see. There were two potential topics people had. The first is kind of a big one, so maybe we'll see how it goes. But a couple of weeks back, somebody had submitted a question to me by email and asked two things. And let's see if I get them right, if you're watching. The first was, how have you connected with like-minded physicians or, obstetricians? Yeah, I feel like that's such a great topic. And I wish I had more experience to share with you because, as you know, I really think it's to our benefit and our clients' benefit, everybody's benefit to have collaborative arrangements that feel good. So, I'm not talking about as a midwife, having to answer to a doctor. Like that's not what I want to do. Hence the latest podcast that many of you have heard. CNMs, licensed midwives, they might have supervising doctors. So that's not what I meant. And I don't think that's what the person asking meant either. So, how do we find these people and how do we develop relationships? Here locally, it's definitely been harder. And I think that's true in a lot of places. It's way easier to develop relationships, with people elsewhere. So, Dr. Stu comes to mind, right? And, Nathan, we have the new podcast together. Those are two great examples of physicians and OBs in particular that were easy connections and have become friendships and have taken time. We had our first Indie Birth Midwifery Conference here in Sedona, 5 years ago. And Dr. Stu was invited to that. And I had met him previously, but that was his first, involvement with anything that we were doing. So, it takes time. And I think in those cases, it's taken invitations, like, let's chat about this thing. Let's do a podcast together, let's get on the phone. And if you have time to talk about this or that, or asking them questions, or, just like creating genuine communication and conversation. I think that's so important because doctors as friends can certainly be useful, but I think what I'm more interested in is an equal relationship, as far as sharing experiences and learning from each other. And that is hard to find. It's definitely hard to find. So here locally, I wouldn't say, honestly, there are any doctors that I would feel comfortable calling or consulting with. There was a female obstetrician a couple years ago, that ended up helping out with a transport of mine. And she was really awesome. She was really great. And it ended up being a really great birth. And I appreciated her. So truthfully, I should have probably pursued that a little bit and just, maybe tried to develop the working relationship with her. But alas, I did not, because I don't know, life is busy and and then all this virus stuff hit, and the relationships that we're developing at that hospital seemed to kind of come to a halt, which I think has happened in a lot of places. I had been invited actually to their OB meeting last year, and that was very intimidating, and I didn't actually get to go because the virus thing happened. So things were on their way to developing. So I don't have more than that to share here. I think it's always worth reaching out and, being honest about who you are and how you work and what you would desire in that relationship, even saying that to yourself before you call, like, what do I actually want from this person? My more negative experience here with this, and this is many, many years ago, is that there are doctors, of course, that are completely not only uninterested, but seriously dislike midwives. So, you won't want to go that direction if you get that vibe. And or they just don't know how we work or what we do. And maybe they have the impression, some of them, if they're a little bit defensive, that you're looking for someone to like clean up after you. Those are the kind of things they say when they don't know midwives and they don't know how we work, and they might come in contact with any kind of situation, a transfer at the hospital that maybe has nothing to do with you. I mean, it could be a free birth, it could be who knows what, but it just depends on the community. So that's my humble advice. I don't know that I have better than that. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do feel purposeful in this work. And I mean, I know wherever I wind up, like, it is right and it will be right. But I guess as far as this retreat center goes, it is a super strong vision, but it's also one that just hasn't manifested yet. Like with the school, we were going to make a school and we made it. Like it it happened and it unfolded so seamlessly, not to say it wasn't hard work. So I'm the impatient one mostly. Like I have to remind myself that when things are aligned and in good timing, that they do unfold. But I also keep talking about it too, because I really feel like if the right person hears this, then that's also a way of things unfolding perfectly. And it's a really organic way to ask our community, not for more help than anyone can give, but just holding this vision, holding the vibration of this retreat center where we can have students come and learn, we can facilitate and witness really beautiful births. We can have our colleagues, some of the people I've already mentioned today, come and help us out. I mean, it could just be the best, like the most amazing thing ever for people, for women that are wanting that experience wherever it is, and also for the future development of midwifery in the ways that we see it happening. Hey, Megan, there's so many fun people here today. Okay, so this was another question, and this is the bigger topic of the two. So I feel like if people have questions about this, it would be fun to engage that way. Otherwise, it'll just be a blab, which is kind of what this is anyhow, I suppose. Okay, so can you describe your prenatals? Do your clients select how often and what is done or discussed? Yeah, I mean, really, there should be a whole prenatal care series of some kind, maybe outside of the school. But in the school, we have an entire course called Wise Woman Prenatal Care. And so actually, all of this is covered there. So I'll have to give the brief answer and make you want to go take that course if you haven't, and enroll in the school if you haven't, because that's where we really put the bulk of our efforts with stuff like this. The prenatal time to me is obviously so important. And I love birth and I love witnessing birth, but even where I'm at right now, just, Rumi's little, kind of don't know where we're going to be. I'm not super busy with actual clients. I just have a few who are really lovely and, make it worth it right now. But I'm doing a lot of virtual prenatals. And so I'm really getting even more deep into how that can look, even if you can't touch someone, even if it's sort of not even on the table to do any of that, feeling a belly, listening to a baby, taking a blood pressure. So those things are important, but the relationship of the prenatal time is the most important thing, I think. And also, and more important actually, is just the development of this woman, this pregnant woman, as she wants to be supported with the things she wants to talk about. So as far as schedule for prenatals, I do offer the traditional schedule. So that's every month in early pregnancy up until 28 weeks, and then it's every 2 weeks, and then they say every week at the end. And I don't know, it feels like whatever you need at that point, Some people are like, I'll call you when I'm in labor at that point, and some people don't. So I guess the point is that's the schedule that's on the table, but I'm open to whatever. Sometimes people want to hang out more, or they just have something that feels like more pressing in that month, because a month can feel like a really long time, just depending on the person. So I'm open to whatever. And conversely, if someone's like headed out of town for a month or two, then we're not going to probably do it the same way. So maybe a virtual prenatal, maybe just a break, and we get back on when they return to town. So I guess an important thing to talk about is just when you're practicing autonomously, you don't really have needs that need to be met that are not something you've come up with yourself, if that makes sense. So if you're licensed, there's a way you have to follow the schedule. And again, I do offer the same schedule because I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And again, we can be flexible, we can do more, we can do less, but this is really their time. So if you're pregnant and I'm working with you, this is your creative process. and you're the artist. And in hiring a midwife, I think you're hiring support. I think you're hiring someone to bounce ideas off of. You're hiring someone to hold the space for you. And you might be hiring somebody to kind of help you navigate the flow of pregnancy care, especially if it's your first pregnancy. As to the question, like what topics are discussed, I really leave it open. But of course, I have my list in my head. And in midwifery school or in an apprenticeship, you learn the flow of clinically appropriate topics, really. I mean, I definitely think there are emotional and spiritual topics for sure that you also learn the flow of, like when those typically show up. So sure, as a midwife, you do have an idea of the structure. And I think one way that it really does show experience-wise over time is that you're not stuck for those topics if somebody doesn't feel like talking or they don't have a lot of questions, then I totally step in and it's like, okay, well, here's some things we could talk about today, or is this coming up for you, or how is this area of your life going? So to me, there's never a shortage of questions or conversation, but I've noticed with students that are new in particular, they don't have that experience, right? So it reminds me that that is a skill. Talking with people, yes, can be natural, more natural for some people, others not so much. But the flow of topics or possible conversation is a skill in midwifery because you learn over time that there are things that just pop up more, or you feel more into this particular woman and her relationship. And, maybe that's a great place to go. So if you don't have that experience, and sometimes students say this, when they do practice prenatals, which we have as part of the project in the Indie Birth Midwifery School, the student will kind of be overwhelmed and, oh, that was awkward. Like there was so much silence and, it looks so easy. It looks so easy when I attend prenatals with you or with another midwife. But when you're in it and you're a student and you don't have the practice or the experience, it can be sort of awkward and just like talking with a friend, which isn't bad, but there are topics I think that are important to address. And there are things I have on my list that I do get to, so I don't wait for someone because they may not even have it on their list. One thing for sure is nutrition, at least covering that basically, seeing where someone's at, seeing what help they need, what resources they need, what feedback they want. And then often people are good to go, but that's something that I make a point about bringing to the table because you just don't know. You can't make assumptions, as the fourth or the 4 agreement says, right? So I don't want to make assumptions about someone's health or where they are emotionally, spiritually, anything. Don't make assumptions. That is very applicable to midwifery care. So another topic that I bring or have in my head towards the end is what I call a cobweb clearing. And all of my clients essentially do a worksheet. They do a worksheet with their partner. And it can be, 35 weeks, whatever, 34, 36, somewhere that last month. And I ask them to do this worksheet together, and then they bring it to the prenatal and we all talk about it together. So there are questions on there about fears and, expectations, really, again, not making assumptions. What does their birth vision actually look like if they write it out? And I'm never surprised because I've been with these people at that point for 5, 6, 7 months, and I'm not surprised, but I think it goes a long way to ask for even more clarification and detail. Also gets them really thinking clearly and actually writing out what their birth vision is, what their fears are, and then we talk about transport. So I do think that's important. So there are other topics for me that come up. I don't know that I'm going to go into all of them right now, but definitely. And again, there's even the clinical piece. So at 28 weeks, do you talk about gestational diabetes and that kind of thing? Like you have your clinical schedule of topics. And I've found for me over time here, that doesn't feel as relevant to be honest. So it might seem weird, but I haven't had anybody desire that kind of routine mainstream testing in so long that I probably do often forget to talk about it. Unless, someone brings it up or has questions, then totally. I really do believe people should know their options. But yeah, that kind of clinical decision making isn't so much a part of this practice. Now, depending where I go, depending on if I leave this area, that may really change because it's, I think, just different. It's different with different groups of people. So I've enjoyed that though, even though I think it is fun to talk about choices like ultrasound, like GBS testing. We totally should know those things as midwives as much as we can, be up on all of the currentness and all of the thoughts and research and all of that in case somebody really does desire that, because I don't have judgment over what they do. I really, truly don't. So hopefully that answers the question. I guess to kind of wrap that topic up, prenatal care can look like really whatever somebody wants. And so if somebody doesn't know what that looks like, then we have the framework for them to guide the process. And still, everything is a choice. And when they lay down and, they want you to feel their belly and listen, we're teaching as much as they're open to, where are you feeling kicks? Okay, let's see where your baby is. Here's what I feel. That's probably the butt. This is the back. Here, do you want to listen to the partner as well? Do you want to listen? So engaging them as much as possible. And as far as other clinical choices like blood pressure, pulse, that is optional to the point which I have the information I also need to be comfortable. So first visit, I love to have a blood pressure and a pulse and all of the things on a person. I've never had anybody say, absolutely no way. Usually when you explain it, they're fine with it. Can we do these things today so that we have baseline readings for you? Most people are like, sure. And they don't know either. They're like, I don't know what my blood pressure is, so I'd like to know. Sure, let's do it. And then as the prenatal care goes on, is that something that has to be repeated every visit? It depends on the person. Depends on the person, if they're reporting any symptoms. And some women want all of it. They're like, I want all of the things. I want to pee on a stick every time. I am my own science experiment. And they're learning a lot. So totally. And then there are women who, I can think of someone years ago, and she was a repeat client even. So with her second baby, she just wasn't interested in anything hands-on. She was like, if you want to feel my belly for you, you can. She's like, I don't really care. I don't need that information. I feel the baby moving all the time and all of that. So I think just going with the flow. And yeah, if you're the midwife though, not being afraid to also express if you feel like something would help, give you more information, etc. It really is a dialogue. It's not, yes, the woman's in charge, but also I think as midwives, we have our own boundaries and things that we might need to know. So, if someone comes in for a prenatal and they're complaining of, I don't know, any of the things that don't sound good, like not feeling well and having lots of headaches or whatever, then it'd be pertinent perhaps to take their blood pressure, right? So it really depends on the person and what you think makes sense for them. And, if you've helped someone for 3 pregnancies or 4 and they've never, ever had any elevation in blood pressure ever, that's like me. That's not a thing for me. I haven't taken my blood pressure or haven't had anyone take it in, so many pregnancies. It's just not a thing for me. And I'm not interested in it, and it doesn't feel important. And as silly as it sounds, it would probably stress me out more to have it done, especially routinely. So I think having choices on the table, knowing why they would be important or not, and explaining that and letting people choose. And then also giving your 2 cents if you feel like there's something else you wanted to add to that. So in that way, prenatal care can just be so fun and, different really from person to person. And when I try to explain this, especially to people that are pregnant for the first time, So maybe they're coming for an interview and, they've interviewed people around. It's really hard. And I don't know that I really need to care more than I do in a sense, because I think the right women are attracted to everything like this if they are, right? Like autonomy and having sovereignty in their pregnancy and exploring and asking questions and, doing science experiments on themselves. Like these are all the qualities of people that I really love working with. So I guess if someone doesn't get it, then that's fine. They don't need to get it. And maybe there's something better for them. Yeah, I'm reading your questions. I have supported people virtually entirely, yes, from start to finish, and been on call for their births even though they're not here. One like sort of public example, and she has a testimonial on our virtual prenatal page, is Brittany Taylor, who is an amazing woman. She has a couple of YouTube channels, I believe, of her own. So you could look them up. Brittany and Connor and Brittany. I don't know which way they have it phrased I think it's Connor and Brittany. And I was on their YouTube channel last year. We did an interview together. So they're people that don't mind that being shared. I help them from start to finish this way, and was on call for their birth, which they did on their own, and then did some postpartum. So that was a great experience. I don't know that that's for everybody. That's definitely not for every woman. That's not for every couple. That's not for every midwife. But when it works, it works. And I think it was just the right support for them. And it felt really good to me. So I've done that for, a handful of people, not a ton, honestly, not a ton. Although lots of virtual prenatals lately with just people in different places, maybe once, maybe twice. But I'm open to the entire flow of care with someone this way if they are. Yeah. Brittany and Connor are amazing. And yeah, she did a podcast with me as well. They both did. So you can find that in the podcast archive if you want. I think it's like Brittany and Connor's autonomous birth experience. We talked about their whole thing. So yeah, they're awesome people. Not awful. I'm looking at the thing. Useful. Awesome people. And that worked really well. So yeah. There are some people in Canada that have finished the school for sure. My Canadian geography isn't the best, so I'm not going to attempt to tell you who they are here, but on our platform would be a great place to ask Danielle, because there are a couple that are serving different parts of Canada. A couple I can think of anyway. Yeah, sorry, I'm catching up here with comments. I know, right? The prenatal practice. Thanks, Megan, for commenting on that as a student. It can be. It can be so awkward. And so just to be brief, if you're not in the school, the assignment is to practice a prenatal on someone. And maybe you know them really well, or maybe you just met them for the purpose of this assignment. And then not only practice in all of the ways, but also to self-assess. And most people, and Megan, you're not alone in feeling this way, most people, unless they really know the person they're practicing on well, have a feeling of awkwardness. Like it's awkward to touch people. It's awkward to ask them personal questions sometimes. And, that just comes with the territory. It's less awkward when someone's hired you as their midwife for sure, but there definitely is experience there. Okay, Megan says, is there anything you truly insist your client does? Yeah. And what's your response to a client who refuses to do something you genuinely feel needs to be done, like in a birth turning weird? Yeah, those are great questions. And I have ended relationships, ended client midwife relationships a couple of times. And a lot actually in the last year. I've just gotten less compromising on my own boundaries. And also, I'm sure you agree, Megan, being pregnant recently that never helps me be, um, more compromising. Let's put it that way. So there have been a handful of people. And let's see, what has that come down to? I don't insist that anyone does anything. It's a lot like the podcast I just put out. Like, people can do what they want to do, but then I may not want to be involved. So the one thing that I can think of that I insist people do, in a sense, is eat. And that's a huge conversation, because then it's like, well, how much or what? And I'm not even like going to those specifics. I just mean in general, like, eat. There are women that don't eat. They don't eat food. I don't understand how that works, or barely. And it's not enough to sustain a pregnancy. And the handful of times that's happened, there are people that are not well and they're complaining about every little thing. And, it's just like so common sense to me. So sure, sensitivity to people's emotional states, their issues around food, their childhoods, like there's a lot there. But if someone just puts up a wall and they won't eat food and they're not really willing or wanting to talk about it or receive support, then that's not for me. I don't know how to deal with that. And I guess in general, if people are not really wanting to open up in a relationship kind of way, then I'm not the right person for them. So maybe there's somebody that's more comfortable for them to do that with. Or I think there are a lot of people who aren't really interested in that. And it's easier for them to just act like midwifery care is a blood pressure and a pulse, because that's how a lot of midwives treat it. You come in, you do the things, hi, how are you, goodbye. And if someone doesn't want to engage on a deeper level, then they should do that kind of care, that other kind. That's just not what I offer. So I've tried over the years, and I've shared a couple of these ideas along the way, tried to refine the process so that you don't wind up in a relationship, a client midwife relationship with someone that really isn't a good match. You got to screen as best you can and educate them to the capacity that you can about their choices. So it's not my job to like provide 20 hours of education on the types of midwives in this area. But if someone comes for an interview, I'll at least spend a short time kind of explaining the differences. And usually it feels pretty clear. Like, they either come back and they want to do this together, or they don't come back and I never hear from them again. So getting some of them that upfront feels better, even though totally it happens where you wind up with a client and it's really just not the right match. And, I have actually had a bunch of people this last year, like I shared. It was a weird year, but I can think of one in particular, really beautiful, smart young woman, totally got it on a lot of levels, but was with a partner that was not someone I could work with. To say he was abusive would be correct, and I don't know in relationship to her, although I could make assumptions. I'm not going to do that, but he was not a pleasant person towards me for whatever reason. I don't know if he just treats women like that or whatever. No, wasn't going to work for me. And so that was a hard conversation. And she was angry, she was like, well, how can you do this? Like, I'm the one that needs support. And I was like, I totally get it, but I just can't sacrifice myself. And I know you don't really understand. And I wish I could do better explaining, but I'm also not going to come in between a couple, it's just not what I'm going to do. So they had their baby, I guess, by themselves. And I saw her not long ago in person at the park, and she ran up to me and gave me a big hug and was like, I totally understand now. Thank you so much. I learned so much from you. And I had a great birth. I had a great birth. And P.S., I'm not with the partner anymore, but whatever. So yeah, sometimes it's not pretty and it's hard, but go with your gut. Don't think you can make it work if it's not feeling right. And people won't be happy with you, but that's okay. That's okay too. And I'm not, of course, advising anyone to like abandon a woman, days before she has a baby or even weeks before. But when you're in the zone of someone's pregnancy, birth isn't super close, it really is the more compassionate thing to do if it's not the right match. And if there are things that are not aligning for you, then they are free to create a different vision that is probably better for them too. Other examples I can think of, there was someone I worked with years ago who was having their first baby, and it was during one of my pregnancies and births. So there was like a period of time when I wasn't providing hands-on prenatal care to her because I had just had a baby. And some things came up just in her health that from a distance sounded a little concerning. So I remember, talking with other midwives and coming back to her and saying, hey, it seems like I'm not there to like actually assess you right now, but it seems like you might benefit from some blood work. Would you be open to that? Because I'd hate to miss something not going right now, especially. And I just remember her being really firm. She was like, no, I'm fine. And I really don't want to do that. And I had to sit with it a little bit. I had to sit with it like, is that okay with me? If she's sick, if she has some pregnancy pathological disease, like, how's that going to feel? And, so I really took my time feeling into it, and ultimately it ended up being fine. And, I said to her, okay, like, that's fine. If other things come up though, I may not be comfortable with continuing to support you if you still refuse any kind of testing. But for now, like, that makes sense to me. And I think we can just wait a little longer or see how it goes. And it ended up being fine. There was nothing wrong with her. She never got lab testing. And I have to say, it's such a humbling lesson. And I don't think it's the same lesson every time. So that's important. It's not like that's always appropriate. And there might be times to step away. But I was definitely glad that it worked out. And I was also glad that I didn't step away because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from her just in her confidence. Because it really was, it really was a show of her confidence and connection, I think, especially as a first-time mom, to not get freaked out by my recommendation. And that's the danger too, even in this kind of midwifery where we're trying our best to like be on an equal playing field with people. We're not their authority. If we make a recommendation, they might freak out. They might take it really seriously then because they know we're not just like telling them to do all the things. So I super admired her for that. Just, saying, well, that's nice that you think I should do that, but I'm not interested and I know I'm fine and healthy. So that's a really amazing thing, I think, and very rare, very, very rare. So I guess that's the long answer to your question, Megan. But I think always, take the time to feel into your own response as the midwife. And that's where protocols, like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can write up your protocols to a thing like gestational diabetes. I mean, that might be a bad example for a few reasons, but your protocol being like, this is how I deal with this thing all the time. I always do this, and then I do this. I think in midwifery school, yes, learn about what you might do, learn about what the testing options are, what the results might mean, and play with your imagination, especially when you're in school. So if that happens, what would I do? What would I feel? What are some other ideas I might have for her? But in the moment, when you're actually dealing with that human, I don't think protocol is something you want to put on to her. Yes, in the back of your mind, you have your ideas, but no. Otherwise, then we're just practicing the way, I don't even know if doctors do, to be honest, but we're practicing in a more medicalized way where people's unique experiences really aren't as important. And yet, like with the story I just told you, maybe, that could have gone another way where this woman wasn't okay and all of that, but it didn't happen. And I'm pretty sure it's because she was really tuned in and I was tuned in. I was tuned into her, and my boundaries, although I have them, are also not the same all of the time. because I don't know, that wouldn't make sense to me. So that turned into kind of a long blab about prenatal care. Yeah, Patty, I agree. And that's why I love midwifery, that's why birth and all of this never gets old, because you really never know anything, the minute you think you do. And this has also happened a handful of times. Like, I can think of a bunch of people that maybe with signs and symptoms they had, or, whatever, you think in your head, uh-oh, like, better be careful. This could be going in that direction. And 9 times out of 10, truly, it's not when you're working with normal, healthy people. But yeah, it's always great to keep increasing your knowledge, keep increasing your skill, tell lots of stories, listen to lots of stories, work with lots of different people, and just never really assume you know anything at all, but feeling into the situation and knowing that whatever choice you make, if it's feeling right, whether it's to keep working with someone, whether it's to not keep working with someone, then you really have to honor that and then not get back into your head about, oh, but I'd feel bad. Oh, she won't have anyone else. Nope. That's not the way to go about it. We have to be as authentic as we can and have as much integrity as we can in this work. And that will mean that not every woman is right to work with, and we are not the right one to work with every woman. Just remember that, you have to make this work for you in a way that feels good. And by being solid in that, by having that integrity, by having boundaries, hopefully those are the kind of people you also bring to you. So it's not as much of an issue, although it totally does happen. All right. Well, thanks for watching. Somehow the whole hour got away from me here, but thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the comments, and to be continued as always next week. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you next Monday.